Thank you, Paul, so much for agreeing to this interview. For those of you who are watching, Paul is the Government Minister for Small Businesses and for London and has been the MP for Sutton and Cheam since 2015. Firstly, Paul, hotels, pubs, libraries, hairdressers and bingo halls have been given the green light to reopen on July the 4th, the first time in months. However, I know many local small businesses where I live voluntarily decided not to reopen. How can you persuade these businesses that it is safe for them to reopen?
We've been working with the industry, with the hospitality and leisure sector over the last few weeks to make sure that we come up with a guidance that suits as many of the different types of workplaces, why you can't be really overly prescriptive because it needs to satisfy a lot of different conditions. So we've been working with them. And as long as they've demonstrated that they've put the social distancing in measures and all the mitigation in measures, then we've talked to the insurance companies, the environmental health officers, and we want to get them open as soon as possible. Now, some businesses are choosing not to open just yet because they just feel a little bit more time. They need a bit more time to get ready, and that's up to them. But we want to get them up and running, and we want to make sure that customers, as well as those business owners, have the confidence to come out and start spending and start enjoying themselves again, but safely and sensibly.
And I know the government has encouraged small businesses to utilise the test and trace system and use protective screening when they reopen. But what other measures has the government implemented to ensure businesses are safe when they reopen on Saturday?
So in terms of things like pubs, it's going to be mainly table service only, getting people away from the bars and those big queues around the bars, which someone will say is no bad thing anyway. And it's that sensible queuing system, as we've seen with retail, and the greater use of apps in order to order and those kind of things. So what customers will see is a different experience, but it's really important for business owners that not only do we get those customers to feel confident that they can come in and feel safe and enjoy themselves, but have that joy so that the positive experience that they expect when you go to a pub or a restaurant or even a bingo hall, as you say, because we want them to come back time and time again. That's how businesses are going to bounce back and be able to survive and thrive.
And many people have criticised the government's plan to reopen pubs, hairdressers on a Saturday. Is it irresponsible to reopen businesses on a Saturday? And by doing this, is the government putting the economy before public health?
No, as I say, we've been working with local authorities, we've been working with the police, we've been working with public health and the health and safety, as well as businesses. So the 4th of July is something that we've had in mind, and we've been talking about to the sector for a number of weeks now. So they've always been aiming for that. And we wanted to make sure that we could stick to what we said, because this is all about certainty, giving people as much notice as possible. You can make arguments for Saturday or Monday. I get that debate, but no, I think it's something once we said it, we wanted to stick with it and work with the industry to make it as safe and but enjoyable as possible.
Only 5% of the population of the UK have reportedly had COVID-19, which leaves 95% of the population still susceptible, and we still don't know for sure if people can recontract the virus. Bearing this in mind, would a staggered reopening of businesses be more sensible?
Well, businesses will open when they feel ready, but I think the key thing in terms of staggering and separation is the social distancing. And so if we can keep people to the measures that has been discussed, and that's one of the reasons that we made a big change in our communication, talking about, instead of saying stay at home, saying stay at home if you can, but stay alert, because it's that using your common sense is most important. If you go back 3 months ago or so, this was all to do with protecting the NHS and making sure that we could protect the lives of those most vulnerable, the people that have been shielding, rather than the likes of you or I. So now clearly anybody's susceptible to the disease, but for different levels, and the extent you might get that disease and how it affects you will vary. So younger people tend not to be as badly affected as older people, for example. So it's the spread of the disease, I think, that's most crucial, and that will be dealt with by social distancing and by the test and trace.
Has the government prioritised the reopening of pubs over schools? I know the government has pledged this week that all children will be back in September, but could this have been done sooner? Many village halls, community centres could have been used for temporary teaching. I don't understand how children can go to pubs, they're allowed to go on holiday, but they can't go to school, especially as we mentioned, children are very low risk of getting an illness from the virus.
Yeah, so what we've got to do is, you're right to say that we've got to get schools back open as soon as possible so we don't spoil life chances, the educational opportunities of so many children. But bear in mind that a number of schools have been open right the way throughout all of this process for key workers. And so you've got to balance the educational needs of the majority of children with actually the pressures that have been on teachers who have been going in, day out. They haven't all been furloughed. They haven't all been sitting at home, as some might think. They've been out there protecting, providing online education and activities for key worker children. So they do need a rest as well, but they also need to prepare for September. So a number of teachers will be working throughout August, actually getting the schools ready for that September date. That's not something you can easily do overnight.
And as people head to the pubs this weekend, which we know they will do, obviously, is it going to be easy for people to follow social distancing after they've had a drink?
Well, clearly that's the challenge, and so that's why we're asking for people to be sensible. But pub landlords are used to dealing with people, and they're good at regulating themselves. They have that self-regulation to within their premises. What we've then got to make sure we're doing is, as well as appealing to people with better nature and just taking it easy and be sensible for those first few days, working with local councils, working with the police and other groups as well to make sure our high streets, that after kicking out time, we can stagger those closure times so that public transport doesn't get overloaded, and so we don't see scenes that we sometimes see in some of the media.
So are customers or landlords, are they going to be, out of the two of them, which are going to be policing this social distancing? Are customers having a responsibility to do it themselves, or is it the landlord's job?
This is all about everybody doing the right thing and working with each other. So the landlords have spent the time putting things and measures in place to socially distance and to be able to regulate their business, but customers need to work with them, because if they don't and we start getting localized outbreaks, we'll see what happened in Leicester, and we'll see some of the restrictions coming back in, which isn't going to be fun for them, and it's going to be not good for our economy, which means the loss of jobs, livelihoods, things we really want to avoid. So it's incumbent on all of us to police this.
We've had daily briefings throughout the crisis, but over a week ago they were decided that it was going to finish. I know there is speculation of introducing daily press briefings in October, but at this current time, many people would welcome daily updates on where COVID-19 is flaring up regionally. So was it the right decision to end those briefings at that point?
Well, I think the press conferences were ended because of the viewing figures were down, but I will still want to release information. And I know we are looking at ways of publishing more localized data, because I think being transparent is absolutely the right thing to do. It's how we do that is a way that's actually going to be read, accessible, and useful to people and local authorities to plan. So we're certainly looking at that.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen a local lockdown this week implemented in Leicester, and many other towns such as Bedford, Doncaster and Hounslow have seen significant high incident rates of COVID-19. Is a second national lockdown inevitable, and do you think people are going to comply with it?
I don't think a session national lockdown is inevitable by any stretch of the imagination. It's possible, as our localized lockdowns. But this is why we've got to make sure that everybody is alert to this. This has not finished. You can go out now and shop in confidence that if you do the right thing, you'll be safe. You'll be able to get what you need and have a good time. So similarly, tomorrow, crikey, I need my hair cutting, and so that's the first thing. But then, I do want to have a pint and enjoy myself as well, but things will be different, and I need to make sure that I'm doing the right thing as well. If we get that right, with test and trace, and bearing in mind there's 180,000 people across the country who have been pinged, if you like, by contacted by a tracer, who are socially isolating as a result of a contact that they've had. So what they are doing, they have had their freedoms restricted again on that system, so that the rest of us can carry on our lives as normally as we can. So that's what I mean about this sort of working together. It's not easy. It's an unusual situation, but it's a fact of life, unfortunately.
And on the whole, I think the furlough scheme has been quite popular. That's been implemented by the government and helping 9.1 million people on the scheme. But what is going to happen in October if the government decides not to extend the scheme and businesses can't afford to take these workers back on?
So we know that unfortunately there are people already being made redundant at the moment. We've seen some job losses, and that's clearly regretful. But this is an unprecedented time, and it's unprecedented sudden shock to the economy. And as you rightly say, the government did wrap its arms around the economy with the furlough scheme, the self-employment grant scheme, the various other grant and loan schemes that are available, and some deferment of VAT payment and business rates. But that does need, we do need to taper that off as we reopen the economy. It's the right thing that employers start to share that cost. So if you remember, the furlough scheme should have pretty well finished by now, but it's now going right the way through to October. And with the flexibility that we can start to bringing people back as and when employers need them. But we are working on what we do in terms of economic recovery. The Prime Minister made a speech last Tuesday, bringing forward some of our infrastructure developments, which will in itself create jobs and create opportunities and boost job creation. The Chancellor is going to set out what he's going to do further next week and his viewpoint for this. But we'll always keep things under review. But at the moment, the furlough scheme does need to, it's right that it comes to an end, because we've also got to make sure that we've got the public finances on even keel as well, so we can continue to fund the NHS, continue to fund the education that we've been talking about.
The high street has already faced a decline before COVID-19 even hit, with many consumers using online retailers such as ASOS. This week there have been over 12,000 job cuts, many from the high street, Harrods making 700 of its staff members redundant. Is this the end of the high street for good?
It's not the end of the high street, but the high street will change. There's no doubt about it. You talked about ASOS. I have regular calls with retailers each week. We have a group of retailers from ASOS to John Lewis's, or online, offline, sitting together. And what this has done, this pandemic, it's accelerated a number of conversations, some good, some bad. So what's good? Flexible working. People are now working from home far more. And actually one of our big manifesto commitments, which I'll be pushing through Parliament as soon as we can, is the employment bill, which will improve workers' rights, but also make flexible working the default position. Well, actually, people have now seen it in action over the last few months and think, you know what? I can manage this now. So a number of companies are already making that change. Digital take-up, the fact that we're sitting here over Zoom, I had never heard of Zoom 3 months ago, and I'm pretty good at technology, using technology. But now here we are doing this. And yesterday I was in virtually, I was in Northern Ireland, I was in the Southwest, I was in east of England, all from the comfort of my own chair. But the future of the high street is really crucial that we get this right. And when we've been talking about what does the high street look like in 10 years time, 15 years time, it is now, what does the high street look like next year? Because there's some permanent behavior change that's going to sit within this. So I talk about the new normal, which is the social distancing. But once that started to ebb away, people have got used to contactless. They've got used to using cash far less in the last 3 months, and there's less fear of using technology, and there's yet less fear of doing online shopping for maybe older people or people who just haven't done it before. So we're accelerating those conversations. We've already started having that conversation with both online and offline retailers, and that's something we need to frankly crack on with, so that the high street can pivot, can change, but it will still be there.
And the government's Keynesian deal this week that it was kind of announced this week of doubling up has been welcomed by many, with the government pledging 5 billion for capital investment projects. Why is this style of Keynesian economic spending so different from the austerity that was implemented after the last financial crash?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of work that we've already talked about needing to do, and frankly, what we're doing is accelerating that. So we know that we need to spread the infrastructure, the investment that we're making across the country, leveling up, and there's no reason to stop doing that. So we want to have opportunities for everybody. So we can either stop spending everything, but that's just going to cut opportunities. So what we don't want to do is throw money around. This is actually investing for the future. And so using the money to create jobs, but create jobs in a way that was sustainable. The net zero pledge that we've made is going to be a green recovery. Can we change transport? Can we change the way we use energy and these kind of things by the greater use of technology and a different type of job? So that's the kind of investment that we're going to be using, rather than, as I say, spending for spending sakes, or cutting off or closing the taps on spending entirely.
Is this a kind of a way of appealing to the people's government because you've got the trust of many northern voters? Is this part of the manifesto to attract those trusted voters that voted for you to change their lives for the better?
Well, the one answer is yes, but the second answer is basically keeping our promises. We did say that we're going to level up. We did win the trust of people who have never voted for us before. We won seats that we have never ever held, and so the least we can do is keep our promise. We said we were going to do it. Let's get on and do it. And yes, we've had this big unprecedented situation, but that shouldn't deter us for our long-term objectives, which is to level up across the country. I sit there and work for small business, for small businesses. My job is to make sure that the UK is the best place to start and grow a business. But also within that, I don't care where you are in the country, it should still be the best region in the country, in the UK, to start and grow a business, for example.
Many thanks, Paul Scully. Thank you so much for that interview. I really appreciate your time.